Shall we start?
Yes.
Okay.
And then just like inform.
Just mention
Don't
our
call me
name.
professor. Everybody call me professor because my hair are white.
This head carry too much.
Because exactly, yes.
And you don't even know that? Oh, come
No
on.
one knows that.
Nobody knows.
3, 2, 1.
Okay, hi everyone. So my name is Diah. I'm one of the volunteers of SUAKA Indonesia, a legal aid organization aiming to provide free legal services for refugees in transit in Indonesia. And today I'm sitting here with two wonderful person, Pak Enny Soeprapto and then also Abeer. Pak Enny Soeprapto or Pak Enny is someone very, very respectful in the world of refugee activism, refugee rights activism.
Expertise.
He's one of the experts. He knows from the historical perspective point of view, he knows the beginning of refugee protection issues in Indonesia and also up all the way to the contemporary context. And then also we have Abeer here, which is one of the refugee women who have been living in Indonesia for 5 years?
Almost 5 years.
Almost 5 years, yes. So without further ado, maybe would you like to do your own introduction, or have I done you like a good
Go
job
ahead.
to introduce yourself?
Not at all. My name is Abeer. I'm from Palestine. I'm a refugee since I arrived in Indonesia, December 2018.
Yeah.
And I'm a refugee representative since 2 years ago.
Mm.
We're dealing with many refugee cases, different issues, different problems. That's all.
Thank you, Abeer.
You're most welcome.
Pak Enny?
No, your kind introduction was more than enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, so we're here actually to talk about refugee issues in Indonesia from two perspectives. So the first one we're going to talk about from the historical background, and I think Pak Enny will fill us up with that historical background. And then we would like to know what is the condition in the contemporary context at the moment from the refugee perspective. And then the second part is we're going to talk about how does that then implement in the national level in Indonesia. Because the context that Pak Enny, I would like to ask to Pak Enny, would derive from like Indonesia historical record, but also like the general condition in the international level, like the global condition. In a way, I've always believed that none of us are not connected to each other. And the way that we are connected to each other in this entire world is through refugee issues. So it's not only Indonesia in this world, and we are actually connected to other parts of the world through the existence of refugees in Indonesia. So with that notes, I'd like to ask Pak Enny, what is the history of the presence of foreign refugees in Indonesia, Pak?
First of all, in bahasa Indonesia,
Yes.
the term pengungsi or refugee refers to both people who left their home or place of residence either internally in the country or externally who cross the border to another country. They call both refugees.
Yeah.
So while in international community, refugees, the term refugee refers only to people who left their country of origin, nationality, or habitualization to another country.
Yeah.
That is the definition. That's why when law on on foreign relations was discussed in the parliament, the parliamentarian proposed that refugees should be referred to foreign refugees to make a difference between internal refugees, what I may say. So that was actually, it is redundant, but just to make it clear, because if we talk refugee in Indonesia, we talk about people who left a flood or tsunami still inside the country, as well as people coming from outside Indonesia. So we make it different. That was the start. As you all know, refugee problem, if you ask me about history of refugee problem, history of refugee is as old as history of humankind itself, actually. It's known during the nomad periods and for decades, or has been considered as mainly social and humanitarian problem. Only after the First World War that the refugee problem has been viewed as also having legal problems. That was shown by the decision of the League of Nations at that time, 1921, by appointing the first High Commissioner for Refugees by the name of Fridtjof Nansen, a Norwegian national, as the first refugee High Commissioner. He passed away in 1930, but during his tenure of office, he initiated a number of treaties which recognized the legal status of refugees in international law. But the treaties concluded at that time were basically based on groups or categories of refugees, such as refugees from Spain, refugees from Turkey, refugees from Russia, etc. So in 1946, after the end of Second World War, so the UN established a special agency called International Refugee Organization, IRO. The Constitution was ratified by now the required number of ratification in 48 to consolidate all the refugees which were recognized before the war and after the war. Because after the Second World War, there were a new refugee situation which came up. Unfortunately, this organization, IRO, has not been very effective because the support of the UN members at the time was not very strong, particularly financially. It can be noted that out of 54 members of the United Nations at that time, only 18 were providing contribution for this organization.
Only 18.
So it was not very effective, and the UN was considering to create another institution to better protect the fate of refugees. That was the idea of establishing an institution by the name of Office of the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. That was so the resolution was adopted in 1950, and that is the first arrival. But subsequently, new arrivals are coming up, and it comes up again during 1980s. And in the year 1979, the government issued a presidential decision or presidential decree, whatever you call it in English, Keputusan Presiden. Again, two things. It is limited to Vietnamese refugees. No mention about Laotian or Cambodians. Only Vietnamese. It was an omission, perhaps. And also, again, it is not describe the policy, but also just a guidelines for technical, administrative, and procedural dealing with refugees. Again, so as now, the refugees coming from the Indo-Chinese Peninsula has ceased to become a problem, perhaps. Incidentally, it coincided with the end of the Cold War, I think, 1989.
Yeah.
And if I recall correctly, in 1993, there was a conference in Geneva, and they enacted what they call comprehensive plan of action.
CPA.
So basically, to return the Vietnamese refugees who have not found resettlement in other countries, because they have been there for many years, because of old age, because lack of skill, etc. And in 1979, Indonesia established a processing center in Galang Island in Riau, and at the time there were still some 5,000 refugees from Vietnam who were not able to be resettled in other countries, and a voluntary return was conducted. But under the CPA, Comprehensive Plan of Action, it was voluntary, number one, and then safe and dignified. So it happened.
Yeah.
So the Galang Island was closed in 1996. And during its history, it has accommodated some 120,000 refugees there for processing. Now, the situation in the 90s has changed. Refugees coming through Indonesia, their destination was not Indonesia, but other countries, particularly Australia. One is more continues to be mass influx, I mean, not individual, and it comes from a different region, no longer in Southeast Asia, but coming from South Asia, West Asia, Eastern Africa. So there's a new situation. And the cause of their flight also different. Not as the convention said about persecution on the basis of race, religion, social group and political opinion, but because of the violence which has been happening in their respect their respect country of origin or nationality. Violence because of civil war, because of the political situation, which threaten their life and liberty, particularly their life. They left particularly for that, no longer persecution as such. So if he applies too narrowly the convention, it doesn't apply to them, because they were not being persecuted, or they had no fear of persecution in the narrow sense of the profession, but they left because their life is threatened.
Yeah.
It's threatened, not him, but the family, perhaps the whole group in the village. They had to go out, and so the problem of mass influx has become characteristic of refugee problem after the 1990s until now. Like you can see in Europe, for instance, in one small island in Italy, just you read the number of refugees of asylum seekers were some 900, while the local population is only 800. So it's bigger than the local population. So there's not much experience. So the dealing with mass population is different than the dealing with individual refugee problem. So in the UNHCR system, we have a body called Executive Committee. It said that in the case of mass influx, it is not the determination of refugees should be made prima facie. So you cannot interview one by one. There are so many, so many. I had an experience very exhaustive. When I was in UNHCR, I was sent to Belgium to interview some 1,200 Vietnamese. It's very tiring. 1,200 there. I don't know. I don't know. I was very exhausted. I have to ask the same question. I could the same answer. It's very.
Do you have a deadline, Pak, to interview this 1,200 refugees you have to finish in 2 weeks, for instance?
No way.
So, anyway, this was quite interesting. Anyway,
It's gonna take ages.
Yeah.
so prima facie determination of refugees has been allowed by was recommended by the committee, because you cannot deal it one by one. So what is important is that once this mass influx entered into the territory of a particular nation, let them stay at least temporarily. Let's not talk about asylum. Let them give them temporary stay at least. That is what the so-called prima facie refugees is called, actually. The practice is like this.
Yeah.
Okay. If you enter one by one, how long will it take? It's a mass refugee. Anyway, so that's what the situation after during the 1990s, and it is still lacking what is expected of policy. When I talk about policy, it's an instrument which spells out the position of the country about asylum, about rights, procedure to grant and to consider asylum seekers, who will determine the refugee status, etc. And what would be the position of the government or the country to the durable solution of the refugee problem is to be spelled out there.
Yeah.
But since we don't have such a policy instrument, so we don't know about that now. Now Indonesia continues to be the practice has been followed in the past. When it is faced a refugee problem, Indonesia referred to the UNHCR. That's it.
Always like that.
Always like that in the past.
Which is funny for me, because historically speaking, like what you have explained, we have a very comprehensive history with dealing with refugees. But every time refugees in Indonesia have issues, for example, with government officer, let's say the immigration, they would always talk to UNHCR for that. Don't talk to the government, because we have no idea about that. Always go back to UNHCR. And refugee have always been referred to, in my personal experience, every time I met this immigration officer, they always said, oh, refugee, illegal immigrants. But they're not illegal, right, Pak? Because we have such and such law that you have mentioned, recognizing the rights of everyone, which include everybody, to seek asylum. And refugees comes to Indonesia because they are seeking asylum. But often this immigration, which is a representative of government officials, they refers to refugee as illegal immigrants. What do you think about that, Pak?
Yeah. That is the problem we are facing here. Because law number 39 on refugees, on human rights, which recognizes everybody to seek and obtain asylum, confirmed by the provision of the Constitution in 2000. These provisions have not been implemented as implementing laws and regulation. And that's why refugees, in view of the fact they are people coming from outside the country, they are dealt with as ordinary migrants. Because if we talk about migrant, illegal migrant, and now they talk about irregular migrant. So there's a play of words. Because if we talk about illegal, it's rather harsh. It might create confusion or impression that they refer to criminals who look refuse in another country. While if we talk about irregular migrants, it will be softer. They do not follow the normal procedure only, etc. But I think the essence is the same. At the same. You ask about what is the difference actually? Migrant. Yes, there are differences and similarities, of course. Of course, refugees themselves are also migrants because they are people like other migrants, normal migrants, people who left their country of origin, nationality, or habituation to another country to continue their life there.
Yeah.
The same thing. But there are so many differences. Ordinary migrants are motive, for instance. Ordinary migrants, they want to move to another country mostly for mostly on economic reasons, to have better life, to get job, etc. But not refugees. Refugees left their country because they are lacking protection in their country. They want to save their life to look for protection in another country. That is different. The protection, what is different? That was the purpose. The causes is also different, or the way they left the country is different. Migrant left normally already with proper travel document, proper visa, but not refugees. Some left the country with proper documents, okay, but then they asked refugees status later on. But in most cases, how can they got a travel document normally? They left the country in a hurry, and they are not even under the protection of their own government. The government may be fighting each other with their own people. So how can they use proper travel document? They don't have it. They don't have it. That is the devil. That's why, of course, it is irregular. But to condemn them as illegal migrants, like you have to see why they don't have they don't have proper travel documents. That is different. That is, and also, as I mentioned, the objective for their leaving the country is totally different. And the way they left the country is also different, because ordinary migrant left that country voluntarily, maybe well planned, far in advance. Refugees, they are compelled. They are compelled. They would have stayed if they were not compelled to leave. Okay, that's right. Now, the immigration law has been designed for ordinary migration. There is no special laws in the immigration law which deal with refugees. There's no. So that's why the immigration law has to be reviewed again. Perhaps gradually, if there is an article exceptionalizing the refugee status, maybe that is the reason why. The refugee is considered as migrant as any other migrant. That's why it came up the term illegal migrant, not irregular migrant. So there is no exceptional clause, exceptional article in the immigration law about refugees. That's why it depends on the government, of course, whether they want to review the existing legal document, laws, piece by piece, piecemeal, or comprehensive. Well, of course, it helps a bit if they review the immigration law, at least by inserting one new article dealing with the refugees that said they should have been dealt with differently than ordinary migrants. That's the when you mentioned about the immigration law.
Thank you, Pak Enny. Actually, we have a case study here because I am a migrant in Australia, but I'm a voluntarily. I do that voluntarily. I have all my travel documents and have no issues when I moved to Australia. But Abeer here, really great
have
friend
been
of
forced to be
mine,
refugee.
you are forced to move to Indonesia because you don't
Exactly.
have any
I don't
choice,
have any
other
access
choice.
to a legal statement.
Yeah.
I'm a Palestinian, and we ran away because of our safety law, looking for our safety. There is a war in my country, everywhere. No one is safe, and further than that, we don't have any other choices except leaving, especially after I gave birth to my first kid. It was a horrible situation. So we left to Saudi Arabia. We get a legal statement there. We stay there for like 14 years, and after all, Saudi government decide to localize all the jobs there. And as long as we are a legal statement in our company, which is hiring us, so there is no more renew our contracting, and we don't have any other choices. We try to find any visa to go anywhere to be on the safe side or legal way. The thing is, it wasn't possible because each embassy asking for at least legal statement in your passport or in your document for 6 months at least. Otherwise, you're forbidden to getting any visa. By the end of the day, I have two choices. Where there is two countries only giving visa arrival. One of them is Indonesia, and the second is Cuba. With the 3 kids, Cuba is way to choose. So I don't have any other choices except Indonesia. And within a week, this is the period that I have in my legal statement, less than a week actually, it was only 6 days. So I have to find a flight. And I was lucky because we found it in the 5th day of this at that time. So it's Indonesia, and we get visa arrival for 1 month.